All right, welcome to the SnydeReport. I am your host, Gary Snyder. We have the Notre Dame football shirt going tonight after, their 8th straight win, I think, something like that. Anyway, they are playoff bound as long as they can take care of business with who they got next week. It's escaping me, but I know they end with Stanford. Oh, they got Syracuse.
Exactly
Syracuse.
right.
So with me tonight is, I'll just call him the publisher, Grand Poobah, whatever you want to call it, of the Indiana Citizen, Bill Moreau. Welcome.
Thank you, Gary. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
And I'm going to tell you this right off the bat. Just because I got your name right the first time does not mean I will get it right the second, third, or fourth time. I used to be a financial advisor and an anti-money laundering officer. And what's the thing they always say in finance? Past results does not equal future whatever.
Something about past performance and future results, I think, right?
Yeah, it's and this is a vintage Notre Dame shirt from the Adidas era. So I'm making everyone jelly out there. So now you said you're a Boilermaker fan. So you've had a rough several years.
Well, I'm an alum. Yes, I am. And, we're basketball school. And, the football team.
So Indiana used to be a basketball school too. So,
and I could say this without fear of contradiction, that when you're a Purdue fan, and particularly of my vintage, you grow up thinking that Notre Dame fans are the most obnoxious football fans that there are. But no. Turns out IU football fans can be even more obnoxious.
When I have to rate most obnoxious fans, I always have to start over in Columbus and Ohio State.
No doubt about it.
They are the worst. And my two favorite teams are Notre Dame and whoever is playing Ohio State.
I am with you. I made the mistake of going to a Purdue-Ohio State game there many years ago, and they just whooped us. And I think the score was 28-0 late in the fourth quarter, and we're driving to score and timeout, and they put the first team defense in to preserve the shutout. And I mean, we were harassed on the way in, we were harassed during the game, and harassed on the walk back to the car.
I have one daughter that graduated from Purdue and one that graduated from St. Mary's College up at Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I've been fortunate in my time of doing, the radio show and the newsletter and the podcast. We covered Notre Dame football for, about 12, 13 years. So, every single game we were either on the sideline or in the press box.
Oh, man.
And just amazing experience. And we had them for Purdue too. And we didn't go to a lot of those, but we would take advantage if they were playing a really good team or popular team. We would hit that.
So years ago, Ann and I would do a home and home with Joe and Maggie Kernan. This goes back to when Joe was still mayor of Fort Wayne, and Maggie is a Purdue alum. So we started this tradition, went on for years. So first game's at Notre Dame, and the first quarter finally comes to a close. And I turned to Joe and I said, man, I know we're down like 21-0, but that was the longest quarter of football I've ever endured in my life. And he looked at me just total deadpan and said, well, that's the reason it was so long. And it felt so long to a Purdue fan is you've never experienced TV timeouts.
Exactly.
Right? And of course I went,
oh. That's good. I'm going to tuck that one away. Well, Bill, we wanted to bring you on to talk about, I guess first, why don't you just take a few minutes, tell everyone who you are, what you do, your experience in politics with Evan Bayh and all that other political experience that you got. That way people that don't know you will.
Okay, I'll give you the short version. But I want to tell you, Gary, that I was recently introduced to make a presentation about our work. And the person, went on way too long. I think started at birth and then got into my career. And it was Bill has been this and Bill has been that and Bill has been the other. And when I finally took the microphone, I said, you do realize that Fred just called me a has been. So, yeah, I'm a retired lawyer. And I guess the story that brings me to this work is that when I was at Purdue, I had the great pleasure of meeting Birch Bayh when he was running for reelection in 1974. I'm an Army brat. I wasn't raised in Indiana, came to Indiana to go to Purdue, had never met a Birch Bayh and met him for the first time when I was editor of the Purdue student newspaper and he was running for reelection 1974. And that's one of those butterfly effect moments, right? Because then I went on to work in his presidential campaign, went to work for him in his DC office, had a secret office romance that's now a 46-year marriage, right? We got married in his hideaway office in the Senate. I went to law school at Georgetown at night while working for the senator. And when he was defeated in 1980, Ann and I moved to Indianapolis to raise our family. And so when Evan came, started the Secretary of State's run in 85 and through his time as Secretary of State in the governor's office, I was deeply involved in his campaigns and his administration. And so I guess that's as good a summary as anything, except to say that, Ann and I devoted a lot of our lives to trying to build a real two-party state in Indiana. But by the time I was getting ready to retire in 2019, there wasn't much evidence that a healthy two-party state still existed in Indiana. So we created something in the nonpartisan space called the Indiana Citizen Education Foundation to address the really chronic civic health crisis that Indiana's mired in, right? We are stuck in the bottom 10 of states for, voter
You might as well go
registrations,
climb Everest or something.
civic literacy and turnout. And, don't take my word for this. I don't know whether this is going to show up backwards or not, but the Indiana Bar Foundation publishes something called the Civic Health Index every 2 years. This is the 2019 version based upon the 2018 midterm statistics, and that was what really formed the basis of our effort to try to do something in the nonpartisan space to increase voter registration, civic literacy, and turnout. So that's the brief history of why we formed the Indiana Citizen Education Foundation.
I love your story about Birch Bayh, and I had a very similar experience when I was a freshman at Ball State. I think I was coming back from football practice or something and get off the elevator, and there is this young man standing there shaking everyone's hand at Hurlbut Hall over in Muncie. And he walked up, introduced himself as Evan Bayh. He's running for Secretary of State. So that's my Bayh story to get it started.
Right? I mean, that family, loves people and it shows. And I think that's where it starts. I think that's where that commitment to public service starts. And you feel it, you sense it, and they communicate it.
Now, you talked about the Indiana Citizen a little bit, one of our sponsors, so thank you for that. And it's one of my daily reads. It's the State House File, it's the Indiana Citizen, and it's the Indiana Capital Chronicle, I believe.
They
My
do.
first three visits when I sit down in the evening to start the newsletter, first three visits when I get up at 5:30 in the morning to finish it up. So tell us a little bit about the Indiana Citizen, because one of my personal favorites, and we use it almost daily if there's something in there, that if there's new material in there. And you guys have just been doing a great job, especially with Tom Labanco. God, I'm going to butcher his name, who's been a guest on this show several times, but his work with Christian nationalism and Micah Beckwith, and he just does a great job with that.
Well, yeah. So after we got through the 2020 cycle, where it turns out the whole idea of, in a nonpartisan way, trying to improve registration and turnout, we ran smack into resistance from the political class. I mean, so as we went into 2021, of course, there are no elections in 2021, so no need for our online voter guide, which we have been building and perfecting. So we added boots on the ground at the State House and really made it a priority to cover the 2021 redistricting special session. Right, timely, right?
Yeah,
So
perfect.
in our first year as a journalism platform, we took first prize from the Society of Professional Journalists for political and governmental reporting, beat out the Star, beat out the Associated Press, because of the focus that we gave daily, sometimes twice a day. We were posting stories about what was going on at the State House with redistricting, and we exposed at that time in real time that those maps were incredibly gerrymandered. And right, because how else do you get to 70-30 House and a 40-10 Senate and a 7-9 congressional delegation? So we managed to incur the ire of all the supermajorities who were in charge of the State House in the west end of Market Street. Well, the way the calendar works is that in the next year, redistricting shifts to the county local level. So we took our journalism down to the east end of Market Street, the city county building, and exposed those 25 district maps, the city county council district maps, to be every bit as gerrymandered as those that were drawn by the supermajorities at the west end of Market Street, Gary. So in short, in the space of a year, we
You made
pissed
them all
off.
mad.
We pissed off everybody, and I took that frankly as that we were around to call them as we saw them. And particularly when it comes to gerrymandering is always wrong. Whoever does it, gerrymandering is always wrong. Whoever does it. And so that is something a theme that we have kept returning to, including as we have tried to cover this redistricting / gerrymandering effort that the President of the United States has been trying to forcefully urge his allies in the Indiana General Assembly to pass. And as we sit here, it appears as though the state Senate Republicans, under the leadership of Senator Bayh, got to be careful here. I don't want to say anything that's going to get him in trouble, right? By praising him, but apparently they're just not the votes in his caucus. Now, frankly, I don't know how long this is going to last. And I think those who have been resisting this awful move to gerrymander Indiana's congressional districts worse than they already are, need to remain vigilant. And fingers crossed that it won't recur. And Gary, I think I may have heard Joe Donnelly say this, or maybe Evan Bayh said this on your last show. Here's the thing that we can all count on. When that idea was first floated, all 150 members of the General Assembly knew in their gut it was wrong. Right? Mid-decennial redistricting, whatever the motive may be, I guarantee you all 150 of them turned to their spouse or somebody they trust and said, we don't do it this way. This is wrong.
What in the hell are they talking about?
Yeah. We do this once every 10 years. It's hard enough. And oh, by the way, those who voted for the maps in 2021 praised them to the skies as being, brilliant, works of genius, perfect maps, right? Well, they were gerrymandered then because the results speak for themselves. And then they were asked to go back and gerrymander the congressional districts, even worse. And oh, by the way, the 150 members of the Indiana General Assembly were being asked to rewrite maps that don't even benefit them. Right? It was all risk and no reward, except insofar as their primaries are concerned. If you want to see Exhibit A on the pernicious, invidious effect of gerrymandering. It's legislators who care only about getting through their primary. And that's what this was all about.
That's most of them these days.
Yeah. Well, Democrats too,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you can't draw a map.
I wouldn't know. I've never run in a Democrat district.
Well, right. I mean, and when I say this to people from outside of Indiana, and I talk about the small number of safe Democratic seats, they look at me like, huh? Why would Republicans do that? Well, they had to, right? The math won't permit 100 House seats and 50 Senate seats, right? So you got to pack Democrats together into safe districts, and then Democrats only care about the primary.
Bill, can you hold through a quick break?
Absolutely.
You're listening to the SnydeReport. We'll be right back.
Washington politicians came to Indiana to get us to cheat and redraw our legislative maps. They want you to spend millions so they can rig the system and silence your voice. Hoosiers play fair. We don't need their meddling. We need our elected officials focusing on what we need most, making our lives better, lowering taxes, and bringing down the cost of energy and groceries. So tell your legislators, don't let Washington insiders rig our elections. Solve real problems and earn our votes.
All right, this is the part of the SnydeReport where we thank our sponsors, and we have a growing list. So let's start with Robin Winston. Robin has been there when we first sent out our first email, 147 subscribers. We're now over 108,000. So thank you, Robin Winston, and helping us get the podcast going in the right direction. Next up is our good friend, former Congresswoman Jill Long Thompson. Her book, Across the Aisle, Why Bipartisanship Works for America. Get that anywhere you buy your books. Also, former two-term governor, two-term U.S. Senator Evan Bayh. Evan has been a sponsor of the newsletter, now jumps on board with the podcast. Congressman Andre Carson. Congressman Carson has been there from the start. We're glad to have him over here on the newsletter now. He needs your help to win re-election next year. So make sure you support Congressman Carson. Next up, State Representative Cherish Pryor. Cherish has been there from the start on the newsletter, joining us on the podcast now. So is State Senator Greg Taylor. I want to thank Senator Taylor for all of his support through the years. Next, we have a couple of new sponsors. First up is Indiana Citizen. You want to check out their new project, One Heartbeat Away. Do Christian nationalists have an agenda for Indiana? You know, all you have to do is look at the lieutenant governorship and you can see right away that they do. So thank you, Indiana Citizen. Next up is Jump Laundry. You can visit them at jumplaundry.com. They have home pickup. They do your dry cleaning, wash and fold with, I might add, no judgments, and next day service. So if you're in a crunch for time, you don't want to do your own laundry, get a hold of Jump Laundry at jumplaundry.com or at 317-740-5011. And they will take care of all of your laundry needs. Welcome back to the SnydeReport. I'm your host, Gary Snyder. Tonight, we are speaking with Bill Moreau. That's 2 for 2. About the Indiana Citizen. As it's grown over the years. Tell me a little bit about what you're most proud of with that, with the growth that's come with it, what you're most proud of.
Well, gosh,
with the Indiana Citizen.
I'm really proud of two things. Well, maybe I should add a third, that first, that we're still around, because, we got to get up every day to shovel coal in the boiler, right? I mean, this is a nonprofit. It relies on the generosity of civic philanthropists. And by the way, I use that term, it applies equally to somebody who gives us $5 or somebody who gives us $5,000, because if you look at our list of donors and we post our donors in real time, you'll see names that you recognize, but whether they've given $5 or $5,000, they're all active, engaged, informed Hoosier citizens, right? And they're contributing to something with the promise that it'll be free and accessible to everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things I'm really proud of is that last year in 2024, we were able to reach 400,000 Hoosiers. 400, the way, we've learned to measure these metrics, 400,000 unduplicated visitors to our website, most of whom were making use of our voter guide, which we call our virtual ballot. So, it's taken a lot of time and a lot of money, but we have perfected an address-driven voter guide. Go on our site, type in your address, and literally all the names on your ballot pop up. Click on the name, and you'll go to unbiased information that we've been able to aggregate about each and every candidate. So I'm proud of that. I'm also proud of the way our accountability journalism platform has evolved.
You have some amazing writers.
Well, thank you. Yeah, our current editor, Marilyn Odendahl, she spent her life as a journalist, and it shows. Her last job was at the Indiana Lawyer, so she knows a lot about the legal community, and so has been following Attorney General Todd Rokita very closely. She can't get her calls returned from him anymore.
I'm shocked.
And then this year, we got a grant to focus on Christian nationalism, and its most visible proponent, Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith. So we have a feature called One Heartbeat Away: Do Christian Nationalists Have an Agenda for Indiana? We launched that on January 13th, which was when Mike Braun and Micah Beckwith were sworn in. 100 years, almost to the day, as we pointed out on our launch, that the Klan elected Ed Jackson to be governor of Indiana. One of our launch pieces was by Professor Jim Madison, the esteemed historian at IU, who wrote the book on the Klan takeover of Indiana. He drew the connections between what had happened 100 years ago and 100 years later. We also had a wonderful piece by Ball State econ professor Mike Hicks about why Christian nationalism is bad for economic development. But so this year, we have been focused a great deal on, first of all, who is Micah Beckwith, who became lieutenant governor without a whole lot of scrutiny attached to who he was and what he stood for. And then more importantly, the Christian nationalist agenda. And there is a Christian nationalist agenda.
Absolutely. One of the great things about your writer, Tom
Lobianco, is that?
Lobianco, I should know that, is we were interviewing him about one of his articles, and he broke the news that just floored everyone, that he actually got to ride in the $90,000 SUV with Micah.
Yeah, I think in real time he didn't fully appreciate, right? That story didn't break until afterwards. But yeah, I look forward to
He got real close in the microphone. He goes, "I've got a secret. I rode in it."
Yeah.
We're like, what do you hope to improve about the Indiana citizen?
Well, I hope that we're going to continue to have the financial support to continue this level of scrutiny of those in power. Right, Gary, you're in this business too. And I will tell you something that has become, I've turned it into a matter of pride, right? Many people in the position of power these days won't return our phone calls. Okay. I say shame on them. I spent some time in public service myself. I think you've got an obligation to return phone calls, but okay. They don't return our phone calls anymore, but they are so active and voluble, right, and visible, right, that we can use their own words, right, to put in stories so that those who are not plugged into social media can read what their leaders are saying. So they may not be talking to us, but I'll tell you this. Guess how many times we have had to publish a correction?
I'm going to say not many.
0.
That's not many.
0. So they may not like us and they may not want to return our phone calls, but not one of them has yet emailed me or Marilyn saying, you got this wrong, run a retraction. Not one. And we know they read us. We know they're.
It's amazing how many Republicans, some of them just leave their name on it. They don't care. But there are others that open the SnydeReport every day and send it off to all their friends.
Well, right.
And the
news
role
for
that you play
there,
we can see that.
Well, right. This role of aggregation, and we do that too, right? We don't have enough reporters to rely on original stories all day, every day. And so like you, we're in a position of reading the best that's out there and aggregating that as well. And you know, that has the effect for some of our readers that, you know, we're the first place they go in the morning. And we appreciate that very much.
You know, and I'm amazed. I did not start this newsletter when I was asked to. I'm like, yeah, never mind. Robin's like, you ought to do it. Or wait, hold on. You ought to do it, Gary. I'm like, yeah, we'll get back to it. And then a year later, we did. Our first email went out with 147 emails on it. And now we have over 110,000.
Yeah. I mean, what a story that is. That's just such a great story. Hey, before we wind down, if you'll permit me, I'd like to talk a little bit about 2026 and the elections in 2026. And
by all means.
But it may surprise you that I don't want to spend a whole lot of time talking about the Secretary of State's race. Instead, I want to talk about the school board race. So Lieutenant Governor Beckwith was very active in lobbying for the enactment of something called the Partisan School Boards Bill. Right? In a state where I always thought our unofficial state motto was, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know, it turns out somehow Indiana's tradition of nonpartisan school board races was something that was broke that needed to be fixed with partisan school board races. So along came what is now known as Senate Enrolled Act 287, which will require school board candidates to declare a party preference.
Do they have to, or do they have to? It's optional.
Well, the way the statute is written, you can identify yourself as a member of one of the political parties. You can identify yourself as an independent, or you can identify yourself as nothing. So there appear to be four choices. Although I've read that statute so many times, it may permit somebody to file as a libertarian. But yeah, you've got to have something after your name. And when you file, if you don't put anything next to your name, there'll be a blank after your name. And of course, there's no primary process. There's no winnowing down process. And so there could be an unlimited number of school board candidates, but only a month in which to file. So that's another interesting part of that statute, Gary, is between, I think it's May 18th or May 19th and June 18th is the filing period. And that's when you have to decide whether you're going to run for school board. And there's a reason that Lieutenant Governor Beckwith was so active in support of it. And actually, he told us why. So he convened a private meeting in Lieutenant Governor's office on April 11th. At 1 p.m. And you don't need to take our word for it. We broke the story of this meeting and released the minutes of the meeting, which they weren't really excited having out in the public domain. So don't take my word for it. He's got something called the Anti-Woke LG Advisory Committee. You got to love the name of it. Anti-Woke LG Advisory Committee. And that document lays out the campaign plan for the takeover of Indiana's school boards. And why do they care about taking over the school boards? Well, they told us that too. When Lieutenant Governor on his own got all wound up about the genius of the 3/5 compromise, remember that kerfuffle? And somebody asked him, where does this come from? He identified a book publisher in Texas called Wall Builders, has nothing to do with the border wall, Wall Builders, that he relied on as his source for the real American history. Well, if you go to Wall Builders, which I'm not sure I would recommend you do, you will see that they have built a library around an alternative recitation of United States history. All the old white guys, I shouldn't say it, put it that way. All the founders who filed into the Pennsylvania State House in that sweltering summer of 1787, according to this reading, were all devout Christians who brought their Bibles with them to work every day, inspired by the Word of God to create the governing document for this new country explicitly as a Christian nation, is their version. If you take over the school boards, they have a role in developing curriculum and choosing textbooks. This blueprint also talks about making sure that there's a Turning Point USA chapter. Turning Point USA, the late Charlie Kirk's organization,
Right.
ensuring there's a Turning Point USA chapter in every Indiana high school. And we've also now learned about LifeWise Academy. A lieutenant governor is a big fan of this group called LifeWise Academy, who sets up these so-called released time church Bible study classes right off a high school campus.
It was a big deal in Huntington several years ago.
You know, another story that we broke. So when you think about the possibility of Christian nationalists taking over our public schools in Indiana, this is not an abstract idea. It's not, sky is falling kind of hysteria.
It's happening.
Lieutenant Governor Beckwith has told us exactly why he supported this legislation and exactly what Christian nationalists plan to do when they take over Indiana school boards. So, 2026 is shaping up to be a really important year, with all due respect to the Bayh and the Secretary of State's race and the state treasurer and state controller races. These school board races, there are going to be 279 of these elections, 279 school boards with elections, 805 school board seats up across Indiana. And that is where the battleground for the future of the state of Indiana will occur in November of 2026. So thanks for letting me filibuster a bit about the importance of these school board races.
Before we let you go, I do want to get your thoughts on the redistricting, because I'll tell you, I'll be honest. I was completely shocked yesterday when that news came out. Caught me off guard. I thought this was a done deal. I thought there was no way they were not going to cave. They weren't going to listen to Trump. But, maybe a little bit of that luster has come off of the Epstein file shine, if you will.
Right. We touched on this a minute ago, Gary, and I was as surprised as you. It teaches you never bet the family farm on anything, right, that has to do with politics. But I really believe that this was a moment in which enough members of the Senate Republican caucus said out loud what everybody said to themselves and to their loved ones, which is, this is wrong. Okay. It's wrong to do it in the middle of a census period. It's just wrong to do. And so enough of them are not on the ballot, right? Here's the genius of having a 4-year term instead of a 2-year term, right? My hunch is that there are enough of them who are not on the ballot in 2026, either by virtue of retirement or that they won't be up until 20, said, I can't do this. You can't force me to do this. But there's an interesting legal question. So you'll recall that the governor issued an executive order, as he has the power to do, calling the General Assembly back in for a special session to begin on November 3rd, as I recall. Well, and then somehow that was superseded by an agreement that they would just begin the 2026 session, right, earlier, begin it in December and take up redistricting then. And so what Leader Bayh announced was Senate's not coming back for that in December. what happened to the governor's executive order? I don't see it repealed or superseded or taken back. So I bet there's some interesting conversations going on about the force and effect of the governor's executive order. So as I mentioned a minute ago, Gary, I'm sure all of the anti-gerrymandering groups have spent this weekend celebrating, as they should, but I bet they're going to be vigilant come Monday.
It's one thing that I have learned watching the Indiana General Assembly. Never get too excited until they gavel out. Period. Because what's dead today could be alive tomorrow.
No doubt about it. And yeah, and that of course is an axiom that attaches while they're in session, right? Now they're out of session, but will they come back into session at the direction of the governor? And it's interesting, in the Indiana Constitution, it clearly gives the governor the power to call a special session. It doesn't compel the legislature to show up.
And I'll close with this. I was talking to a Democrat state senator about a month ago, and I said, this is going to pass. It's a done deal. I would be shocked if it didn't happen. And he told me, I don't believe anything in politics happens by coincidence.
A lot of things happen by accident, though, Gary. So we can talk about, we can devote a whole show to the number of things that I witnessed with my own eyes that occurred by accident.
He told me if 6 Republicans or more don't show up, it's not going to pass. We have 40 Republicans not showing up now.
Right.
So, did he know something? I don't know. But, a month ago, that's what I was told. And I just kind of scoffed it off. And I probably shouldn't have, because it's coming to fruition now.
Well, it'd be interesting to see whether history ever records by name, right? I told Leader Bayh, I'm not having any part of this. Yeah.
Anything else you want to cover before we let you run?
Well, I got a whole bunch of stuff, but we don't want to bore your viewers. Well, I will plug a book. And it turns out that the leading scholar of Christian nationalism is at IU Indianapolis. His name is Andrew Whitehead. He's written 2 books. The first one got him tenure. This is very academic, Taking America Back for God. And then he wrote a memoir called American Idolatry. So if you're going to spend any time getting under the hood of Christian nationalism and only have time to read 1 or 2 books, Andrew Whitehead, Hoosier born and bred, raised in a white Christian nationalist, white Christian evangelical, critical difference, family, first generation, goes off to Purdue, takes an American history class, and his professor starts to describe who the founders were. And after class, he summoned up all his courage and went up to the professor and said, "Sir, you're wrong." Because Andrew had been raised to believe that mythology about who the framers were, right? Because absolutely critical to the Christian nationalist philosophy is that the whole idea of separation of church and state is a myth. Mm-hmm. The framers did not intend separation of church and state. They will tell you they certainly believe that the state shouldn't control the church. First Amendment says that, but they will also tell you that the church can control the state. And so it's always useful to remember, as we think about trying to find common ground on these issues, how do you think about the separation of church and state? It's interesting. It's always interesting to try to figure out what the framers had in mind. Mm-hmm. But it's also useful, it seems to me, to ask the question today. What do you believe today? Separation of church and state, good thing or bad thing, right? If I had the money, I would invest in a poll, and I would try in the most unbiased, unprejudiced way to ask Hoosiers to take a vote today on whether they think separation of church and state good thing or bad thing, because therein lies a gulf we can't bridge. So where do the majority of us come down? I submit to you that whatever we think that the founders had in mind, always good to know. What do we think today? Separation of church and state, good thing or bad thing? I think most of us would say good thing.
There's a billboard on State Road 28 just as you're coming into Huntington from Fort Wayne. And I don't know who put it up, but it's been there a while. I don't know if it's still there. Last time I drove that way, it was. And it says separation of church and state, not separation from church and state. Something like that. Separation from separate or something like that. Maybe, it's late, but it's from religion or of separation of religion or separation from religion.
Yes.
Not separation from religion. There we go.
Exactly. I think,
but that's going to take a lot of editing there.
I think most of us are and should be sympathetic to, supportive of the idea that public officials, government officials would bring their religion and their religious values to work with them every day. That I hope we could all agree, particularly those of us of faith, that there's not a wall of separation between you and your morality and your beliefs and your public responsibilities, except when you take a copy of the Bible up to the Legislative Services Agency and open it to a provision in the Old Testament and say, turn this into a bill draft for me. And the folks who adhere to this Christian nationalist principles, in fact, there was a resolution introduced at the end of the session that got more than 20 House co-sponsors that explicitly, it says, be it resolved that our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ informs our work, and we're here to fulfill his will. No, that's where the church is trying to explicitly rule the state. And we don't want the state ruling the church. We don't want the church ruling the state.
Bill Moreau, thank you.
I appreciate the chance, and I will look forward to following you every day, Gary. Keep up the good work.
I'm Gary Snyder. He is not. He is Bill Moreau. This is the SnydeReport, and we are out.